I've gotten into a particular level of comfort zone. I think that our minds always want a sense of safety. And I don't think that, psychologically speaking, for our well-being, I don't think there's anything wrong with trying to seek a level of safety. And to what degree that you or I will cross that comfort zone is going to be entirely up to us. Social media has sort of almost distorted our reality that it's either has to be like all or nothing. I was so desperate to find this one way that would answer everything almost. But then last week I made this abstract and it completely changed my own perception and reality of what's possible. Hello and welcome to another episode of Teaside Thursdays with your artist friend Win. Today, what we are drinking is actually very special. What I'm drinking is, and I hope you can see, this tea. And this is a tea that I got from my home country of Myanmar. So you might have noticed for the past few episodes of Teaside Thursdays that I certainly collected not a whole lot, but just a couple of different teas from my home country. I think, since I started this Teaside Thursday episode, I've actually found myself being drawn to experimenting and discovering different types of, I would say, not just your typical kind of tea, but like quirky teas. In any kind of creative endeavor, I always appreciate people who sort of, create something that's new and exciting and something that we haven't experienced before. Just like that, I also appreciate it when people are putting together, even, in tea, like combinations of tea that I have never tried and I would never think to try in the first place. But I think every now and then to step outside of the edges of our comfort, even in tiny ways like in tea flavors, is a really, really good thing. And that is also a prelude to the topic of this week's conversation. But before we go into that, I also want to show you exactly how they package this tea because I think that it is pretty incredible. So I'm going to try and clip this. And hopefully you can still hear me. Maybe there's some good ASMR sounds. So when you open this tea like this, you get it in a little packaging like this. And I haven't even told you the flavor of this tea. I've shown it to you, but I haven't actually told you. But what I'm actually most excited by is how they've packaged it. So take a look at this. Like in most teas that you buy from a supermarket, and this is also a tea that I got from a supermarket in Burma, but like take a look at this detail, and I think I need to do another close-up, but I hope you can see. So you've got this little pouch, and it's a proper pouch. And I don't know if you would get excited about these sorts of things, but I get really excited when someone has put a lot of thought and care and consideration into the things that they've made, especially since I started to create my own paintings. And especially since I'm sort of embarking on, this art studio business, like the more I notice these sort of little tiny details, like check this out. It's such a good quality, like tea bag. And I feel like you can just reuse this bag. It's not even like a one-time, like use. And then inside, you have the little dried flowers. And again, I'm going to cover my face. I hope you can see. You've got these pieces of dried flowers that are actually components of this tea. So I believe there are two different types of flower. You've got purple tea and butterfly pea with lemon. So I'm not exactly sure what that means, to be honest. And you've got the lemon here. It's dried lemon. And these little like pieces of flour. Again, I think I need to do a close-up video to show you. And it's called purple tea for a reason, because check this out. It turns completely purpley blue. I hope you can see. Like, the camera is a little bit higher from me, so maybe you can see this this crazy color that's happening inside this cup right here. But as an artist who loves color, I really appreciate this. And the ingredients are, I believe, very simple. It's just butterfly pea, 50%, and lemon, 50%. So I think the butterfly pea is actually a type of flower that you can get in the country, and with lemon. So I'm going to look up the flower, and if I find the origin of this flower or this plant, then I'll put it on the screen as well. But how incredible is it that in this little Teesside episode, we are, exploring just a whole new world. Like, for me, these little tiny things make such a big difference. It's these tiny moments that also bring so much inspiration in my life and so much excitement in my life. We often think that to sort of find inspiration or to sort of, experience something new, it has to be something that is big and loud. But sometimes the more we can notice little tiny details of life that sort of surprise us, I think that is actually sort of can do amazing things for our own well-being as well. So let's dive into this week's topic, which is something very present in my life right now. And it's to do with experimentation, artistic practice, and stepping into the edges of our comfort zone. So that's the sort of conversation in a little bit of a nutshell. And in this episode, what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to sort of talk out loud my current thinking and my current direction and my current experience in creating my own artwork and where it stands today, right at this moment in time. And I'm going to weave these sort of topics of experimentation and stepping into the edges of our, comfort zones into that discussion. And I'm hoping that shaping this conversation in this way, and also I'm hoping that sharing my own personal experience in my creative journey, in my artistic process, will also help you either discover a part of yourself in your own life, or discover a part of your own process if you are a fellow artist like me. And I'm hoping that I would be a mirror in your own self-discovery and self-reflection as well. So I want to sort of take this conversation back a year ago when I was very new to, I think, my own personal painting process. So a year ago, I didn't know how to paint with oils. I didn't know much about color theory. I wasn't really sketching as much as I am now. And I wasn't really experimenting with new techniques. I came into this artistic painting world via, like a lot of people, I think, through self-exploration, self-expression, and also just something that helped me express myself through difficult periods of my life, or express myself and helped me kind of, I think, a little bit, understand myself and the world around me. And also, sometimes I think it was sort of like an escape into the life that I actually wanted to create, which is a life full of excitement and a life full of discovery. But at that time, I was in my career of 8 years, and I was very comfortable in the company that I was working in. And I couldn't really see a life that was any different to the life that I saw around me. Now, sort of fast forward to this current day, I know how to paint with oil, which for me, for the longest time, was something that I thought would be so difficult and so complex. I am very much enjoying discovering mixed media painting, which I'm sure you've seen in a lot of my art vlogs. I think the paintings that I'm doing currently are reflective of sort of my personal expression. But at the same time, in the last few weeks, what I've actually felt coming back into the studio after, my trip away to Burma was this sort of like stagnation again. Like, I've gotten into a particular level of comfort zone, being able to use color in a particular way, being able to paint and sketch the portraits. This painting that you see right next to me, for me, is like my most successful painting in terms of color, composition, and interest, and all that good stuff. This for me is like my absolute favorite so far. And I also sort of look at a previous few artworks that I've made, and although they have been beautiful in their own right, I haven't felt this level of, crossing over and stepping over that edge of that comfort zone that I feel like I've almost surrounded myself with. For the longest time in the last couple of weeks, like, I wasn't sure why this feeling crept up on me. Like, is it because I've reached a certain level of skill set? And for some reason, like, I told myself in my head that this must be it. This must be what I am meant to create. This must be what I was born to create. But then there was like a little voice inside of me that was like so tiny, but it was speaking so loudly to me in a way where it was like, I felt like, well, I just felt like it wasn't quite there yet. Like, my mind told me that this is it. And that's the thing with our minds, right? When we think about sort of our comfort zones, like, I think that our minds always want a sense of safety. And I don't think that, psychologically speaking, for our well-being, I don't think there's anything wrong with trying to seek a level of safety. And I think we all have our own spectrums of what we find to be safe and comforting, and what we find to be too much, like crossing over too much of that boundary where we feel this sense of ungroundedness, this sense of just being all over the place. And that is not also good for us either. And I think trying to find that level of sort of stepping over that edge that feels like we are like crossing over our own level of threshold, our own level of discomfort, so that we grow in some ways, is actually really important for our lives. But what I found, especially in the last couple of weeks, is the most important thing is actually, not to compare ourselves to other people. You might think that someone else is having this amazing, adventurous life or creating these amazing, just out of the world pieces of artwork. And you might sort of attach your identity on what you're seeing and think that they are so brave and courageous. What I like to believe is that person, theoretically speaking, is just crossing their own thresholds and boundaries in their own level of comfort. And that's what I've been sort of realizing more and more these days, is it takes a certain level of, I think, like self-awareness and also like self-respect in ourselves to acknowledge and to recognize that we have areas within ourselves that are required for us to feel a certain sense of safety and groundedness so that we can actually be rooted in our bodies. But also we need a certain level of passing that safety and passing that comfort level. And to what degree that you or I will cross that comfort zone is going to be entirely up to us. And it's going to change and vary depending on where you are in your life. And what I'm finding, and it actually makes me emotional to say it, because what I'm finding is the more that I bring self-respect and self-acknowledgement and self-awareness, trying to sort of, think about and feel my way through what is necessary for my own safety and comfort level, and where I need to sort of push a little bit towards the edges, the more that I can identify that in myself, the more that I feel like I am respecting myself a lot more. So I hope that makes sense. And I think it does require us to sort of zone out the rest of the world, zone out of social media, zone out of everything that you've heard in your life from people close to you, people on the internet, people even you consider are your gurus or your teachers or your mentors, and sort of find that space in yourself to be like, it's okay. Like, it's okay for us to have a certain level of the things that we find safe and comfortable. So I'll tell you an example about me, right? So for me, like, traveling always brings me to the edges of my comfort zone because it touches on a lot of the parts in me where I need safety and comfort. Like, I love exploring new countries, and I love talking to people from different cultures, and I love talking to strangers even about their life and their life stories. I find it so fascinating and so incredibly inspiring. But in spite of all of that, I also have this sense of comfort level that exists within me, and, call it sort of from my upbringing or call it from certain life experiences. But whenever I travel, right, like, I always need to know a little bit of, for example, like, where my next meal is going to be, where I want to have food, when I want to have food. Am I staying in a place that is like, not just sort of with hundreds of people in a hostel, but actually like in a place that feels homey. So for example, I especially love staying in Airbnbs because it's actually someone else's home, and some Airbnbs are so cozy and homey that it feels like I'm actually, creating a little home, at least for a short period of time in their place. So I always need a certain level of sort of groundedness in what I'm eating, how I'm sleeping, and where I'm living. That is so important for me that if any of those three things are missing, then I get really cranky and moody and just unbearable. And I also feel like I feel really ungrounded. And lately, as I've realized this, I've actually been trying to respect the boundary that I have in myself, because I think that is also a skill, and I think that is also just us like giving a certain level of love and respect and care for ourselves. We're humans, right? And we have the super side of us that can do amazing things, but I think it's also okay to acknowledge our own weaknesses. When I have that sort of basic level of comfort, I find that I'm able to experience these in a lot richer way. So I hope that example gives you a sense of what I'm trying to portray. This tea is now really, really blue. Wow. This is so amazing. I've never drank a tea like this before. It's citrusy, but also very earthy. And I can definitely taste the sort of flowers. It has a little bit of a definitely earthy aftertaste. But when you first drink it, like you sort of get that taste of the lemon that kind of draws you in. It's very, very nice. I think that as we get older, especially as we get older, I don't know about you, but I find myself doing this. I end up falling into comfort zones that I didn't realize I've fallen into until something makes me realize it. We become more resistant to change and new things. The thing about all of this is there is no certainty. When we step towards even the edge of our comfort zone, and especially as we step over it, there is no certainty in if we are going to be rewarded for taking that risk. It's also always up to us to assess whether we want to take that risk. And I think it's always up to us to assess whether we just want to go a little bit to the edge or go completely off the edge or just go a little bit close to the edge, go down a little bit, go down a little bit, and then go down a little bit. You know, at the pace at which I think we sort of step outside of our comfort zones to experiment and to try new things, to make a change, is completely up to us. But I think in society, and especially also I think, social media has sort of almost distorted our reality that it's either has to be like all or nothing. Like you either have to like make a change, completely go into something completely unfamiliar, or you stay where you are. No one really tells you about the nuances of a life that we live in our day-to-day life where we are stepping outside of our comfort zones and going towards the edges like bit by bit by bit. So for me, for example, currently I'm considering, taking like new fitness classes, and that is completely outside of my own comfort zone. Is it a completely sort of, off the edge, jumping into the abyss? No, but it is still enough for me to feel like I am edging towards it and coming down a little bit and then down a little bit and down a little bit. All of that is just to say that I think assessing our own comfort levels, assessing where we want to find safety in life matters, and it's completely valid. But also, I think trying to identify areas where we can either inch closer to the edge or go a little bit down or completely down in whichever sort of tier you choose to do it, right? Either you come to the edge and just peak a little bit and you might sort of back off a little bit, but that's also okay. Or you might sort of come down to the edge, feel out what that's like in this new sort of territory, stay there for a while, and you might kind of step down a little bit more, lower into that cliff abyss and feel it out a little bit more. And you might sort of do that bit by bit by bit. Or you might completely just decide to jump off completely into this unknown dark abyss of mystery. Whichever way you choose, I think is completely valid and I think it's completely fine. It all depends on how you identify what's important for your own level of safety, groundedness, and well-being, and also where you are at in your life in being able to handle the discomfort. And sometimes we might actually surprise ourselves. Sometimes we think that we won't be able to handle things when things get too unpredictable, when things get too unfamiliar. But the sort of growth that comes, I think, from these sorts of challenges and changes in life even though in those moments it might feel completely chaotic and crazy, I think you sort of go through almost like a growth spurt in maybe like a few months or a year instead of maybe it taking like 10 years or something like that. So I hope that the way I'm speaking about, exploration and levels of comfort zones is not too vague. And I hope that helps you understand just like the things that I've been thinking about lately. So I've been, definitely trying to uncover my own levels of safety, what matters to me, what I like to keep, and also where I want to sort of step on the edge a little bit more. And let's come back to my painting practice because that's what I realized, right? Like, I thought that me doing a certain level of like step one, step two, step three in my own painting process was it. Like, this must be it. But then last week I made this abstract and it completely changed my own perception and reality of what's possible. I want to sort of describe that experience to you a little bit because I had never done an abstract painting before in my entire life. I have a certain level of respect now for abstract artists than I'd ever had in my entire life because I always thought that painting an abstract must be such a simple thing. But of course, just like with anything that I feel like is executed so simply, there's so much depth and layer to it that we just have been so ignorant about. And that's how I found out in a very exploratory, in a very difficult way, I guess, in painting this abstract. When I've been painting these last few paintings, I sort of gotten into this, first I'm going to do this, second I'm going to do that, third I'm going to do this procedural way to the point where I found it to be becoming a little bit sort of stifling because I realized actually that my mind was putting myself into a box again. I was so desperate to find this one way that would answer everything almost that I forgot that there is still space to explore. And when it came down to me painting this abstract, I knew that I was painting it and I had to sort of like get my mind ready for that change. And the way I got my mind ready for that change was a little bit convoluted because first I was freaking out. Like I was like thinking, like I have no idea like how, where I'm going to get an inspiration. And my art program was very good in a sense where it taught us the basic principles and examples and showed us, the certain rules that they found in abstract paintings. And I was able to see a demo from the mentor. That was really helpful. But of course, like, that's also not the same as actually like doing it yourself. And I know that when I'm going to paint something, I don't think it's going to come out the same as my mentors. I've just never found it to be the case. And because of that, I was even more nervous because I really didn't know what was going to come out. And, my brain was already at this certain level of comfort where it didn't want to break it. Like, it didn't want to go there. It was like, why are you going to go there? Because you might make a really rubbish painting and you're going to record it on camera. And if you're going to record it on camera, then it's going to be like, what if it turns out horrible? So the first thing I just had to do was to accept that, if I make a bad painting, then it's just going to be a video about making a bad painting. Like nothing more, nothing less. Like it's just going to have to be that. Like if that's my current reality, then it's my current reality, right? Like it's not the end of the world. So I had to tell myself, it's not the end of the world. Stop freaking out. And then the sort of second thing that only came to me just from, like going about my day-to-day life, like mulling over this issue for me, like that was so present in my life. I realized after a certain point that, at least in my mind, I stopped giving myself the opportunity to make a mess and to let go. Like when I first started out learning on the art program, doing even oil painting, mixed media, acrylic painting, like whatever painting exercise I had to do, like I always told myself, I'm allowed to make a mess, I'm allowed to let go. But at some point, I stopped telling myself that. Why? I have no idea, but my theory is that, there is a part of my brain that just wanted to stay in a certain level of comfort zone. But it was clear from the way I was feeling that my heart didn't align with my brain. Like it wanted to discover, it wanted to keep exploring. Because I think a certain part of me knew that I wasn't even at the edge yet. I wasn't even close to the edge of the exploration that I could make with my own process, with my own paintings. So that was a game changer. This one single thought, actually two, I'm allowed to be messy and I'm allowed to make a bad painting. Evidence shows from me time and time again in my personal experiences, in some way, shape, or form, I've always been able to revive my paintings, figure my way around it. I've resolved paintings before and they've been fine, even though the process was very layered. In fact, that layered process actually gave the painting so much depth and aliveness. And this is why this is my successful painting so far. It's because, by the way, I did an art vlog on this, and it was basically me experimenting with spray painting for the first time. And the first layer of this painting was just this like big black blob in the middle of this painting that was just horrifying. Horrifying to the point where I just felt like I was a really bad artist and I didn't know how I would find my way back. But this right here is evidence. And also other paintings have always been evidence for me time and time again that I have the ability to resolve my paintings. And bad is just a word that doesn't really say much. More so, I think, when we like completely let go and completely make a mess in our paintings, I think it's not really that there are bad layers or bad technique or bad paintings. Actually, I think it's actually depth. To be honest, like I'm just discovering right now as we speak, I think it's not a bad painting. It's just a painting that has depth. A painting that's going to have even more depth as we sort of resolve it, like stage by stage by stage. And yeah, like that's what I did on the first day of creating this abstract. My only objective was to make a mess and to make a quote unquote bad painting. And lo and behold, like I discovered language again in myself in terms of lines and color, and especially this wave organic form. I have to show you a snippet of the mural, like the first ever mural that I did in my living room. That was like 4 years ago. It's not the style of these paintings that I'm doing now, but it has that same language. And for some reason, like there's a part of me that forgot about this form that I really, really loved in that moment, and I still love. And I discovered it by accident, just by painting and resolving this painting like stage by stage. And I don't know, like I personally didn't come into painting to plan everything out. And if you follow my art vlogs and if you watch my videos in both art vlogs and Teesside Thursdays, you know that, I want to discover in my paintings. I want to discover about myself, about life, like about the world, about creating a painting through making art, through making videos, through writing. Like I don't want to go into it having that sense of predictability. And just like traveling, because I know this about myself, I think I'm able to give myself the permission to make a mess, right? And that's what I also wish for you. And I hope that this conversation has been a mirror, a self-reflection in your own right, to sort of spend some time like for yourself discovering like what are things in your life, what are experiences in your life that you need and require for a level of groundedness and safety that is completely valid, by the way. And also, where are the edges that you are willing to push? Because life feels to you like A, it's reached a certain level of comfort, or B, like you know that there is something you're going to discover there. You don't know what that is. You don't know if you're going to be rewarded with anything, but you just know that there is something that you are going to take away, even learn from the experience itself, even if it's a complete quote unquote failure, quote unquote bad. So, what is that edge for yourself? And are you willing to go towards that edge and look down? Are you willing to step a little bit over that edge and stay there for a while and take it step by step by step? Or do you want to jump completely into that edge and find your way through it? And I think these little micro sort of self-introspective moments and micro decisions are actually the things that shape us into the people that we become and the kind of life that we end up living. And I think the world is changing. I think that the way we think about our careers, the way we think about health and fitness, the way we think about family structures and all that sort of things, I think, are changing. And more than ever, I feel like we have like so much opportunity in life, especially if we're living in a Western hemisphere, especially if we're living in a developed country, especially if we come from a space and place of privilege, to be able to ask these questions. It might seem like a selfish thing, but I think in turn, we will only make the world a better place because we delved into ourselves a little bit more and have sort of realized these things about ourselves a little bit more. Because I don't know about you, but I find myself as I get older realizing how I always want to keep myself safe. Not in a certain level of safe that is required, Like, I think it matters to me that I eat nutritious food and I take care of my body and my mind and I do things that help me ground myself. But there is a certain level of safety and comfort that I feel like doesn't really serve me. And as I get older, like I want to be transparent to myself so that I can actually see where one boundary lies and the other starts. How can I, like cross that threshold, cross that boundary? For me, like the sort of thing that I definitely feel like is synonymous with jumping completely into the abyss, not even looking a little bit at the edge or stepping down bit by bit, is definitely like the first few painting marks that I do. And maybe you can see it reflected in the art vlogs. But, like when I make these first ever marks, even in the first and second layers, like I genuinely feel like I'm stepping way into the abyss. And I like it that way. And I find that that is actually where I feel and come alive, where the process excites me. That sort of metaphor of, jumping into that cliff completely synonymous to me with like creating like the first few marks to any painting. Like that's what it feels like to me. So maybe you can find examples in your life too where you have done that. Like, where you've completely jumped into that abyss. how you've handled it. Did you like the way you handled it? Could it have been handled differently? What did you learn from it? And most importantly, did you survive it? And I think for many of us, I think we would actually say, looking at things retrospectively, yes, like we've survived it. We didn't die. We've been okay. And I think reflecting back on past experiences where we have stepped outside of our comfort zones also allows us to continue to push against, the boundaries that we've set in our own minds, to push against, the comforts that we've established for ourselves that are not necessarily serving us. So I am going to end this Teesside Thursday episode right here, and I hope that in discussing, what is actually a very, I think, alive topic, has been beneficial and helpful for you in your life as well. And I hope it has also given you a little bit of a glimpse into my own artistic process and where that is. Let me conclude by saying that from this point onwards, I'm going to continue to give myself the opportunity to continue making this mess, making bad paintings, because I think that for me, like this abstract, I see this as only the beginning towards the edges that I personally need to cross in my own painting process, so that I discover more depth, more interesting intersections that I think will feed back into the development of my art. And I think that will be really helpful for my own artistic practice and artistic career to come. So yeah, so you can look forward to that in my future art vlogs. I hope that you have an amazing day, and I hope that today you can honor, the spaces in you where you want to have a level of safety and a level of groundedness and comfort. Like, I hope you know that that's valid. If there's anything that you've taken from this conversation, I just want that self-acceptance for everyone, including myself, because I know that that's what I struggle with the most, is that level of self-acceptance. I hope that you can accept and respect your own edges. And I wish you, this sense of courage that we all need in our lives to step outside of our own comfort bubbles in little and small ways. I will see you next week in an art vlog, and I will also see you in a future Teesside Thursday episode. Bye. I sing this softly to myself. I sing this softly.